Of course, you know your big three. You know your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising sign, right? Rising sign, that makes me wonder if you also know your setting sign. Let's talk about the relationship between the ascendant and the descendant. Hey y'all, it's your friendo, the Lady Ms. Vagina Jenkins, and I'm here this week talking about the rising signs, all 12 of them, but also how we know what the rising sign is about because of its relationship to the descendant sign. First and foremost, looking at the rising sign, that is the sign that was on the eastern horizon at the exact moment of your birth. So imagine a scenario in which your mom is there, but also she has her trusty handy dandy astrologer with her, and the moment that they declare this person is born, the astrologer runs outside and looks at the sign that is on the eastern horizon. So the equivalent of what would be sunrise in your natal chart. Why is it important to know the rising sign? Because when we know what the sunrise point is of your chart, then we can also know everything about how your chart circle is then laid out. If I know the sunrise point, I can also know where the sunset or descendant point is. I know what the equivalent of high noon is in your chart, the midheaven. I also know what the equivalent of midnight is in your chart, the IC. Those four angles, the AC, rising sign, the MC, the midheaven, the DC, the descendant, and the IC, all the way at the bottom, are the most important four angles in your chart because they talk about some foundational ways that you just fundamentally are or could approach life. So the rising sign is sort of like this filter through which you see the world. The descendant is your relationship to others. The MC is what people can see the brightest and most of you because it's high noon. And the IC is that which you might keep a little bit more hidden, or maybe that thing that's more foundational, right? Because it's more like midnight. Those folks that are just beginning in their astrology journey, you can find your rising sign by knowing your exact birth time. And there are so many chart calculators out there in the world. My favorite two are astro.com and astro-seek.com. If you are a person who does not have your birth time on your birth certificate, or maybe your family does not know your birth time, that is actually not a deal breaker. You can work with an astrologer on a rectification, which means that they would sort of interview you and ask you questions about your life experiences to reverse engineer a birth chart for you. I just want to mention that because I think a lot of people that don't have access to their birth time think, oh, well, I don't have access to astrology, but you do have the potential to get a rectified chart done. And even if you didn't know your exact birth time, you would still know a whole lot of other planetary positions like your moon sign, sun sign, Mercury, Venus, Pluto, Saturn, all of the other planets. You just wouldn't know exactly what house they were in. But still, that's quite a bit of information. So we know that the rising sign is really important because it tells us how the chart is laid out. It tells us those four main angles, and it tells us each of the 12 houses. You know, for example, if we know that Aries is the rising sign, the sign on the first house cusp, then we know that the second house cusp, at least in whole sign house systems, would be Taurus, and the third house would be Gemini, so forth and so on, right? So the rising sign is important in that it tells us exactly how the chart is laid out, all 12 houses. It's also important from an interpretation perspective in that the rising sign is, I think it's more fundamentally who you are than the sun sign. I've said this before, I'll probably say it a million times more, but I often think of the big three in astrology through the metaphor of walking the path of life. And so I think of the rising sign is how you approach the walking of the path of life. I think of the sun sign is what you are aspiring to, kind of the light at the end of the path kind of vibes. And I think of the moon sign is that those qualities that you need to feel emotionally safe, especially as it relates to like your more intimate relationships. And so in this metaphor, I just want to underline again that the rising sign to me feels more like who you are because it's how you approach things, the lens or filter through which you see and interpret the world and your interactions. And because it is the first house cusp, it says a lot about your identity. It says a lot about your physical presentation of your identity, like what you look like or dress like. Just thinking about all of the things that make you you. When you have your self-concept, your ego, your idea about who you are, a lot of that might be centered in your rising sign. Oh, also, anybody in the Bay Area right now? Because why is it hot as balls? That's something that I need to know while we talk about the rising signs. My God. I will also add that the rising sign being so much like fundamentally about you and how you approach the world is a lot of the reason, well, in my estimation, it can be a lot of the reason why people think that, oh, astrology is fake because I met a Pisces and they didn't act like X, Y, and Z. But did you know their rising sign? Yes, you knew their sun sign, wherever that might be placed in the chart. So much of how a sun sign expresses itself is based on like where it is in the chart, what house. So I also think a lot about how important the rising sign is in comparison to the sun sign. I think a lot has been made of how sun sign astrology is king. And so you get a lot of people that say, oh, astrology is fake because I met a Pisces and they didn't act like X, Y, and Z stereotype. Well, okay, they were a Pisces sun, but what house is that Pisces sun sitting in? And how would that interaction have gone differently if you actually knew their rising sign, the ways in which they approach the world, the lens through which they see the world, the filter through which they engage in all sorts of things related to presenting themselves in the world? And I always advise that people start reading horoscopes for your rising sign rather than your sun sign. I mean, you could read all three, your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising sign. But if you had to choose one, read for your rising sign. And the reason why I wanted to talk about the rising sign along with the descendant, the setting sign, is because, well, one thing, we like to discreetly talk about each one of these planetary placements or each one of the houses as if this isn't a full system interacting with each other, planets, angles, interacting to create a unique picture. And so, yes, to presenting content that centers like all 12 signs. That's something that I'm trying to do more so than just talk about the theories of things. But I don't want to discreetly talk about these things as if they are like individual elements. I want to make sure that we're always keeping sight of the system of astrology. That's everything that I have in terms of preamble and prefacing. Now let's get into each of the 12 rising and descendant signs and their relationships with each other. Guess what, Pisces? We're gonna start with you. I know, it's a frabjous day. Kalu Kale. So, Pisces rising. What would I share about being a Pisces rising, and what does that mean in terms of being in a descendant relationship with Virgo? So remember that Pisces is a mutable water sign, very much about understanding the flow and understanding the transitions and understanding the in between or liminal spaces between concepts like spirituality, art and creativity, emotions and feelings, but specifically as it relates to the intersection of emotions and intuition. So how can you put your feelers out there to understand things about the world that are unseen, unsaid, unexpressed, right? Pisces is one of those double ruled signs in that its traditional ruler is Jupiter and its modern day ruler is Neptune. So being ruled by Jupiter, how does that create a lens or filter of seeing the world in a way that is more expansive, that is more curious about expanding and pushing its boundaries? The Neptune part of it, what is it like to have a filter that is more hopeful, more delusional at worst, right? Or at least more imaginative and more dreamy. So the vibes are very empathic. The vibes are very open-minded. The vibes are very much spiritual in that sense of understanding how we are all connected and being able to sense that sense of connection between us all. And because of that connection, sometimes Pisces might have, or Pisces Rising might have a sense of what they call poor boundaries. If you know that we are all energetically connected, why would you not try to Vulcan mind meld with strangers on the street? Why would you not try and absorb, or not even try and absorb the energy in the space? It's just a unconscious sort of vibe of being able to sense the energy in the space. And so what is it like to approach the world through this lack of energetic boundaries, from this place of constantly sensing, receiving, and perceiving? And then if we think about the relationship with the Descendant on the other half, we've got Virgo energy, another mutable sign, going with the flow, understanding transitions, understanding the between spaces of Mercury. Because Virgo is ruled by Mercury, I think about information, and because it's an earth sign, I think about applied information, and applied information that helps us transition to a different state of being. And this is why I think that Virgo is so adept at improving the lived reality around them and of the people around them. And so when people talk about Pisces risings being so focused on other people, having poor energetic boundaries, I wonder if they're perceiving the relationship between Pisces ascendant and Virgo on the descendant. This way of knowing and feeling in your body, because it's the first house, right? Feeling in your body that we are all connected and wanting to relate to people in a way that helps them improve their physical circumstances. So on the more challenging end, Pisces risings might have the experience of pouring into people, maybe at their own detriment. Might have the experience of being so focused on others that you don't necessarily take care of yourself. But on its more positive expressions, what is it like to just innately sense what is needed to improve any given situation, person, place, or thing? That's a beautiful way of being if we can remember our energetic boundaries and how to prioritize and take care of ourselves as we are taking care of and loving on the people around us. Next up, I want to look at Aquarius rising and its relationship to having Leo on the Descendant. So Aquarius is one of the fixed signs, and it's a fixed air sign. It's a fixed air sign, in particular ruled by both Saturn and Uranus. So when I think about all of those things together, let's start with the fixed energy. That fixed energy is committed. It is whatever idea it's focused on, it is going to be committed to that idea and unwavering in that idea. When I think about air, I think about communication, I think about ideas, I think about connecting to people via those ideas, those words, those conversations. And then when I specifically think about Aquarius being ruled by Saturn and Uranus at the same time, Saturn in the traditional sense, Uranus in the modern sense, combining those two things, I think about Saturn as structures, the rules, the way things have always been done, the existing hierarchies, the existing authorities, that kind of thing, the existing containers for things. And I think about Aquarius as the gift of looking at all of those things and understanding the way that they are, and then subverting them, disrupting them, innovating on them. This energy of being like fixed air sign, I very much think about this commitment to ideas and exploring ideas, particularly ideas that are rooted in disrupting the status quo. Aquarian energy to me is the energy of positive rebellion, the energy of radical change and innovation. My Mars is in Aquarius, so I am incredibly passionate and excited about Aquarian energy. Very future-minded, positive change kind of energy. And it has a real queerness to it, for me, in my estimation. In that way that queer people are often talking about building and dreaming and actioning a better world that serves everybody, not just the powerful few. The vibe is very intellectual and very committed to that work of changing, disrupting, doing things in an innovative manner. And then on the Descendant, we have the Leo half of things, relating to people in this Leo kind of energy. Leo is also a fixed sign. It is a fixed fire sign. So it is committed to the idea of following one's passions, particularly one's joys. Leo is ruled by the sun, and that is such a bright, shiny, happy sort of energy. And so what is it like to have this ascendant that's talking about innovating and having conversations and being committed to new ideas that change the world, and relating to people from this place of excitement with a sort of friendliness and likability that people are really drawn to. People love to sit under the sun. People love to be in the sun, to sit under the sun, to bask in its warmth and its glow, and to also be shined upon and reflect that light. If there were a more challenging expression of this energy, I would think about the challenge of finding yourself as an outcast in some kind of way, and feeling as if you have this inner light to share with people that may not be received because of that outcast, weirdo energy. But then in its more positive expression, what is it like to know that you are weird and consider that a superpower? What is it like to revel in your queerness, to shine bright, knowing that you are different and innovative in a way that the world needs? And then let's talk about Capricorn Rising. So Capricorn is a cardinal sign, and it is ruled by Saturn, and it is an earth sign. So combining all of those elements, I very much think about cardinal signs as a sort of leader type energy, or maybe the first at doing something. When I think about Capricorn being an earth sign, I very much see Capricorns being a leader in understanding what the rules are of this sort of physical realm. How do we get our material, tangible needs and resources met? When I think about it being ruled by Saturn, I very much think about the energy of, okay, what are the rules? What are the hierarchies? What are the established groundworks? Who is in authority? What are the hierarchies? What is the container for this physical space? And how can I be a leader in that kind of realm? Because it's an earth sign as well, it's got this practical, kind of grounded energy, very sensible, very dependable. Because of that Saturnian quality, there is a seriousness that people trust to be in charge. It's big boss kind of energy. It can be big boss kind of energy. A misconception that people have about Capricorn energy is that it's so capitalism and career focused. That can be one expression of Capricorn energy, but think about all of the range and spectrum of things that one could feel responsible towards. One could consider their life's work. Not everything can be centered on a job for Capricorn. Sometimes it's the responsibility of taking care of your family. Sometimes it's the responsibility of showing up for your arts practice. So yeah, please consider that yes, Capricorn is a leader, is dependable, is grounded, is sensible, is a big boss, but it does not necessarily need to be in the realm of capitalism. Because you have to remember that on the other side of things, the descendant of Capricorn Rising is Cancer. And yes, Cancer is so much associated with family. And so, yeah, one way that this dynamic could show up is, oh, I have to go out and succeed in the workplace so that I can provide for my family. And I think that that is valid, but also could be a little stereotypical, because what if relating to people in a Cancerian way is about the responsibility and work of taking care of and protecting what you consider your people or your family? So what if that was chosen family? What if that was your queer and trans community? What if that was the practice of looking after your neighbors that are experiencing houselessness? There are so many ways to be responsible for and protective of your peoples. So yeah, Cancer on the descendant. Cancer is also a cardinal sign, a leader, the first in some particular area. And when I think about Cancer being a cardinal water sign, I think about being a leader or responsible in the realm of emotions and feelings. I didn't say this for Pisces, but I want us to understand that feelings are not just, oh, my feelings, but quite literally the feelers that we have out in the world that help us understand the world from an intuitive level. Cancer also carries around this shell, right? So there's a lot to Cancer energy about sensing things so that we can stay protected. If this is how we fundamentally relate to other people, what is it like to sense what other people need in terms of their safety, particularly their emotional safety, but just their safety generally speaking too in the world? And the fact that Cancer is ruled by the moon, which has so much to do with the people. Quite literally, when astrologers that specialize in mundane astrology look at world transits and world patterns, they often will use the moon as a stand-in for what the collective or humanity as a whole or society as a whole are experiencing. Once again, it's this idea of relating to people by sensing what it is that they need to feel protected and safe. Once again, you know, I just have to point out that Capricorn is often perceived as this workaholic that's just in lockstep with capitalism. And I want us to remember that this descendant also exists. And what is it like to walk around with this lens or filter of seeing the world through a sense of responsibility and relating to people through a sense of care and protection? Next up, we've got Sagittarius Rising. Hey, hey, hey. It's my rising sign. And surprisingly enough, one of the signs that I struggle to understand. Between you, me, and Jeebus, I believe that I have a difficult time understanding Sagittarius energy, or at least my particular Sagittarius energy, because I have Neptune on the Ascendant. And for so long, a lot of who I thought about myself as, does that make sense? Yeah, a lot of the ways in which I thought about myself was influenced by what other people thought of me. And so, yes, the Sagittarian energy in the room for me feels unclear. So we gonna learn together. So Sagittarius, a mutable fire sign. So mutability, we have that idea of going with the flow. We have that idea of being adept at navigating the in-between spaces, the transitional spaces, and fire. We have the energy of like excitement, creativity, passion, joy, fun, those kinds of vibes. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and so much like Pisces, it has that sense of expansive energy. What exists right now, and how can we push and grow and push the growth edges of understanding the world around us? And so in that way, a lot of times you'll see people talk about Sagittarius's connection to travel, but it's not just travel for like the sake of, you know, being a colonizer on vacation. It's the idea of, I need to understand more and more and more of the world around me. And a lot of the ways in which people do that is by immersing themselves in cultures that are different from the ways in which they were raised or where they were born. And so, yes, travel, but travel in this sense is more about maybe cultural immersion and cultural exchange. You know, that travel thing is a particularly strong Sagittarius stereotype that I think goes around. And I think that there are so many ways of experiencing cultural exchange and cultural immersion that might not be rooted in travel. Like I said, it's understanding a wider array of the world. So what if it is constantly watching YouTube videos from people who come from different communities than you know? Or what if it's just having conversations with people who come from a different generation or a different background than the way that you were raised? There are so many ways of understanding and broadening one's worldview. And yes, travel is one of them, but also just being curious and open-minded is another. There's a lot of information out there about Sagittarius being like just exciting and exuberant and just fun to be around. And I wonder how much of that is because of the descendant in Gemini. So relating to people through this Gemini lens. Gemini is another mutable sign. Again, transitions, the in-between spaces, understanding how we change and grow over time, going with the flow of, it's an air sign, so the flow of information. And I think for Gemini, so much of that information is gleaned via conversation, via literally sitting down to people and being gregarious and starting those conversations. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. 5 minutes later, you're being invited to dinner at Granny's house, and she's a third generation Bosnian immigrant, and she's telling you about her birth story and how she came to this country and feeding you delicious Bosnian food. And yeah, it's that kind of experience. It's absolutely that experience of just being curious about other people and open to hearing their stories and connecting to people via the sharing of stories. Yes to this idea of Sagittarius rising folks being like world travelers and curious, but how much of that is rooted in the Descendant being Gemini and rooted in that kind of mutable air, ruled by Mercury kind of quality. Mercury definitely wants us to have conversations or at least gather data. And the ways that I see Gemini gathering data is absolutely through these conversations. And now let's look at Scorpio rising. So Scorpio is a fixed water sign ruled by both Mars and Pluto. Mars traditionally, Pluto in modern astrology. I think about Scorpio being a fixed water sign. Once again, fixed energy, committed to, loyal to, definitely seeing an idea through to the end. When I think about water, I absolutely think about like emotions and feelings, but also like feeling and sensing the world from an intuitive perspective. And this is where I think Scorpio is particularly successful in understanding that which is deep, that which is hidden. Like when I think about fixed water in particular, I always come back to the metaphor of the swamp and that saying that people have about still waters running deep. Absolutely, I think applies to Scorpio. And so what Scorpio can sense is the deep, still, dark underbellies of things that people may not necessarily speak about directly. Not the things that are on the surface, but the things that are deep. And I think because of that still water run deep kind of vibe, Scorpio risings are often perceived as somehow mysterious or broody or intense. What I believe intensity is their perception of Pluto. Pluto has depth to it. Is once again not the information that's sitting on the surface. It's not, oh, how was your day? How was the weather out there? It's getting to the point. What are your childhood wounds? What traumas are you healing from? What healing modalities are you partaking in? Are you doing your shadow work? Scorpio risings are often thinking about those deeper realities that are not necessarily fit for surface level conversations. And I believe that because they know to keep those things to themselves, or at least not share them with just everybody, that they come off as somehow mysterious and intense. But if you have the depth, you can in fact swim in Scorpio's waters. Scorpio being ruled by both Mars and Pluto, we have the experience of understanding power dynamics quite intimately and understanding transformation and what it takes to transform one's self and one's situation and the kind of intensity it takes to transform one situation. And so once again, these power dynamics, these looking at the dark undersides of things and understanding how messy transformation can be. Like the butterfly in its cocoon has to turn to goo, to absolutely nothing, to cellular mess, where it becomes a butterfly. Like understanding the deep realities of life that people don't necessarily want to confront. That is the gift of Scorpio rising. Then we look at the Taurus descendant part of the thing. So Taurus is a fixed earth sign, fixed, committed to seeing that thing through to the end. Earth, something about this physical realm, tangible realities. And when I think about Taurus, I think very much about what do I have? And once I have established what I have, How do I keep that the same? What is it like to relate to people through that lens? So when I think about what it's like to relate to the world through the lens of a Taurus, I think very much about loyalty, because loyalty, it seems like in a sort of Taurian kind of way, is the idea of, what do I have? I have this friend. This friend is who I know. This friend is who I've been in relationship with, and I am committed to this friend. It's not that they're not open to new connections. It's just that it takes a long while to vet connections when you are coming from the lens of thinking, this is going to be a person that I am in relationship with for a long, long while and loyal to, because this is what I have. This is established. This is fixed. And so what I guess I'm describing is a different kind of intensity. It's a committed form of intensity. So how much of people talking about Scorpio risings are so intense is them seeing the relating to the world via a Taurus lens, this sense of, you are what I have and I am committed and loyal to you. No, and I would like to stick with what I know. The other thing that I would say about the relating to the world through a Taurus lens part is the part about I have, and how that I have can be rooted in my values as well. And so how those values don't change. And I think that that is a lot of what the perception of Taurus being loyal is rooted in, is that there's this sense of, this is what I have and this is what will always be. And I have a strong commitment to my values, and my values don't change. So it's not the experience of having a friend that's going to switch up on you at any given moment. A Taurus is committed to their both their internal sense of values and you as a fixed part of their life. Now let's look at Libra. So Libra is a cardinal air sign ruled by Venus. When I think about all of those things put together, I think about cardinal being a leader or the first in a particular area. Air, I think about communications and how we use our communications to connect to people, specifically as it relates to Libra too, because of that Venus quality. How we attract people to us by being a leader in the realm of ideas and communications in some way. And that Venus is so much rooted in the more pleasant, artistic, beautiful aspects of life. And so putting these together, I definitely think about Libra rising as the experience of diplomatic communications or being charming. Libra is so much to me, even more so than Capricorn, associated with the workplace, and how keeping things pleasant keeps the money rolling in. You know what I mean? That kind of vibe. So yeah, a lot of people associate Capricorn with capitalism, but for me, it's much more Libra centered. I think that a lot of times people will talk about Libras not being comfortable with the truth, but what if it's not necessarily the truth, it's the phrase, the ugly truth? Because what if there was a truth that could be presented in a way that was more harmonious, more beautiful, more forgiving, and in a soft light? Yeah, this is definitely the rose-tinted glasses of communication kind of vibes. Also, because of the Venus aspect, I think about Libra risings as being more artistic or inclined to at least appreciate beauty, or maybe even embodying beauty in some kind of way, because of that first house connection with the rising sign. And so a lot of Libra energy, I think, is rooted in like connecting to people via these beautiful or diplomatic communications. I think there's this stereotype about Libra being a social butterfly, but what if it's just the idea of just wanting to connect to people, and finding beauty in connecting to people via communications, ideas, conversations, writing. Yeah. On the other half of things, we have the Descendant in Aries. So what is it like to relate to people through this Aries lens as a Libra rising? First and foremost, we know that Aries is a cardinal sign. It is a cardinal fire sign. So yes to the energy of being a leader, but also maybe even putting others first. When I think about Libra risings and their descendant sign, Aries, this is where it gets really, really interesting. So reminder that we're relating to others through this lens of Aries energy. And with a Libra rising, it's really interesting because Aries is a cardinal fire sign. So being first, being a leader in things that are passionate and exciting, right? Or maybe even the creative realm. And it's ruled by Mars. Mars is so much associated with conflict. And unpleasantness. And so what I see when I think about Libra risings is this avoiding of any conflict or unpleasantness, this idea of putting others first, this idea of being excited about people who are really visceral and sharing of their passions. I often see Libras excited about people that have a sort of Aries vibe to them. So Aries moons, risings, suns, Aries placements, just generally speaking, or people that just are living life on their own terms. So much of Libra energy is thinking about what others need and putting others first. That the excitement of Aries is the idea of, oh, what would it be like to put myself first? It's also interesting to think about how diplomatic Libra risings are and how that diplomacy depends on the conflict that Aries energy can bring into a space. And so in this way, they kind of have this symbiotic relationship. Or if we're looking at these two things combined in one person, what is it like to pursue, crave, find yourself in conflict because you like to experiment with easing the conflict, finding diplomacy, and finding the ways to connect people, or helping other people to resolve their own issues and their own internal conflicts. Virgo is a mutable earth sign ruled by Mercury. When I think about all of those things together, I think about, of course, mutability, being more adept at the in-between kinds of liminal spaces, being more adept at transition, and earth, this physical reality, the material circumstances, and Mercury, I think about the information that we gather. And so when I put those all together, Virgo rising gives me the idea of gathering all of the information we need to improve and change and better our material circumstances. So this is very much the energy of, especially like Virgo in the first house, this is very much like kind of self-help vibes. Like, what can I read? What conversations can I have? What research can be done so that I can improve myself and improve my circumstances? And yes, Virgo has that reputation of being a little bit of a perfectionist or being overly critical of themselves, and that can be a manifestation of Virgo rising energy, but I think more so that Virgo is just constantly thinking about, how can I do and be better? Because Virgo has that Mercury energy, then people might perceive you as being more like, social or sociable, or maybe even more communicative. There also might be the tendency to, you know how people say, oh, Virgos love to be of service. I don't know that Virgo rising actually loves to be of service so much, or if it's the idea that people will find them dependable and communicative and communicate the things that are going on in their life, and Virgo can't help but put those data points together to come up with the idea of, oh, this is how you could improve your circumstances. The reason why I say that is because we remember the descendant half of the thing, and Virgo risings have Pisces on the descendant. Pisces is a mutable water sign ruled by both Jupiter and Neptune, and so yes, once again, yes, these in-between spaces of water, so emotionality, but also like intuition, having a really deep spiritual connection, and that spiritual connection making us feel connected to the people around us without boundary. And so Virgo risings with Pisces on the descendant, at least in whole sign house system, can experience this feeling of, they call it service, but what if it is just an absolute spiritual pull, understanding exactly what people need to improve their material circumstances. And you can understand that because of the Pisces intuition, and then you are able to action that because of the Virgo earth, mutable earth energy. And this is just quite a lovely synergy. And yes, you know, when it's having a more challenging time expressing itself, it can be that experience of unsolicited advice. I know what you need better than you know what you need, even though you didn't ask me. But at its highest expression, it can be, you know how they say, when you're in an emergency, look for the helpers. Yeah, at its highest expression, Virgo rising, Pisces on the descendant can be one of the helpers, and I find that so beautiful. And then we look at Leo rising. Absolutely one of my favorite signs. And can we talk about, I really dislike how y'all stereotype Leo as being like attention seeking or attention needing, because that is not the full part of the picture. That can be an expression of Leo energy. But yeah, let's talk about the full picture. So Leo is a fixed fire sign ruled by the sun. So once again, fixed energy, committed energy, loyal energy. Fire, I think about creativity. I think about passion, joy. Yeah, and the sun, just like the sun tarot card in the traditional Rider-Waite deck, the sun has a sort of childlike, baby-like energy to it, and it's just pure joy. And so combining these things together and being ruled by like the sun, this Leo energy is meant to shine, and it is not meant to shine just for the sake of shining, but also to shine on others. I think that's the crucial part of Leo energy that y'all don't understand, that them literally carrying the light within them is actually in service more so to you than it is to them. And so, yeah, the sun shines on us. The sun doesn't just shine because it needs us to see it. Leo risings can be these incredibly attractive, bright, shining kinds of people, but there's also the expression of understanding Leos because of their descendant in Aquarius kind of energy. So while Leo is this energy that people are just drawn to because we are drawn to the sun, we are drawn to the light like moths, it's interesting to think about Aquarius on the descendant. While many people enjoy Leo, there are few people that Leo enjoys relating to, and those people that Leo enjoys relating to are weirdos. And I would say that Leo enjoys relating to people from a lens that is a little bit weird or queer. And why do I say that? Because Aquarius is this fixed air sign ruled by both Saturn and Uranus. And so we talked about this a little bit, more extensively when I looked at Aquarius Rising. But yeah, just this fixed air sign. So this committed to ideas, committed to conversations, committed to data that somehow changes and revolutionizes things, or is at least innovative in some way, sort of like off the wall, off the beaten path. And so that's the kind of weirdo energy that I'm thinking about. And I think that these two energies can reinforce each other. Like, yes, Leo is shining and bright, but a lot of the ways in which Leo rising is attractive is because of its difference, because of its uniqueness. And I think that the combination of Leo rising, Aquarius on the Descendant, can create this kind of energy that feels like a unique, bright, shiny thing that we have not experienced before, that we find, that people around them find exciting. I will also say that for Leo risings, I've also seen just queer, different, weird relationship structures. Solo poly people, ace aro people, just something just isn't inherently queer about their relationships and how they relate to people. There can also be the experience of relating to people more via technology or the use of technology. So like social media comes to mind. Yeah, there's just a lot of innovation, rebellion, queerness to the ways in which Leo risings can relate to people. And I, for one, think that's beautiful. Thank you, Leo risings. Now let's look at Cancer risings. So Cancer is a cardinal water sign ruled by the moon. Cardinal energy, the leader, the first. Water energy, intuition, spirituality, feelings and emotions, and ruled by the moon, very much underlining the experience of intuitions, feeling, literally like that idea of putting one's little feelers and sensors out there and understanding the world through an intuitive lens. Cancer has that shell to it as well, and so while it's doing its sensing work, it has a sense of protection and a value on protecting itself and others. Because of that cardinal water energy, I've definitely seen Cancer be more a leader in the realm of like emotions, so like having that really on point emotional intelligence, and people can see that. People will often perceive them as like emotionally generous or maybe particularly emotionally perceptive. People will often perceive Cancer risings as being like particularly gentle or sympathetic or empathetic. I think because of that, the combination of like protective emotional energy, that it comes off as somehow more nurturing. And so I think a lot of times Cancer risings get associated as like the mother energy or being the mom of the friend group. And I know they be tired of it. Just because they have emotional intelligence and a value on protecting themselves and others does not mean that they have to be in charge of everybody's feelings. You don't have to do that, Cancer risings. It's also interesting to think about the Descendant half of the thing being in Capricorn, literally relating to people via this Capricorn energy, which is, I mean, quite literally the opposite of Cancer energy, but it is definitely not perceived as emotional or as emotionally intelligent as Cancer. So Capricorn on the Descendant, at least in whole sign house systems, um, we're talking about fixed, we're talking about cardinal earth energy. So a leader in the realm of like this physical plane, this physical reality, and understanding how to be a leader, be first, be a boss as it relates to like everything related to the physical realm. So yes, material resources, and money and work and things like that that are traditionally associated with Capricorn, but anything that Capricorn feels responsible to. I want to underline that here because I think that's the deal with Cancer risings, why they get to be the mom friend of the group, is because they take responsibility and understand relating to people through a sense of responsibility. If I love you, I am responsible to you. I show up for you, and my value is on protection. I show up for you by protecting you. And because of that Capricorn earth quality, there's a lot to be said for the ways in which Capricorn risings show up by understanding, and I've got those feelers out about your emotional health, wanting to protect you, and also provide material resources that protect and nurture you. So it's a really beautiful synergy between Capricorn, Cancer energy as we're thinking about Cancer risings. Next up, let's look at Gemini risings. One of my favorite rising signs, one of my favorite clients to read for. Absolutely love Gemini energy, generally speaking. But yeah, Gemini risings are so special. They are a mutable air sign, ruled by Mercury. So the idea of being okay with the in-between spaces, those liminal spaces, understanding transitions, as it relates to air things, ideas, conversations, data points, and specifically because of the Mercury association. And specifically because of the Mercury association, a lot of information gathering, as it relates to Gemini, a lot of curiosity. And I think that's probably how they are most widely known, as being really curious and wanting to have conversations, wanting to gather information that sates that curiosity. Because they are immutable energy, okay with transitions, okay with the in-between spaces, I think a lot of times Gemini can be perceived as, oh, they're a social butterfly. They're just flitting from one conversation to another. They're non-committal. Is that actually true? Or are they constantly broadening and collecting information, data, stories, experiences, and indulging their curiosity? I say all that because of Sagittarius on the Descendant. Sagittarius on the Descendant. Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign. So going with the flow of its passions, ruled by Jupiter, and so an expansiveness. And so yeah, this synergy between these two signs could not be more just so obvious and useful to me. Like, Gemini is absolutely interested in following its curiosity and relating to people by expanding its ideas about humanity and what is possible with humanity. And so it's very much the idea of Gemini following the flow of information and its curiosity and relating to people by following the flow of what brings it excitement and what broadens the Gemini rising's worldview. One expression of this, you could have this really joyful, curious, chatty, quick-witted kind of person, you know, because they're moved by the flow of like conversations, quick conversations with people, right? there's also the other part and the other expression of Mercury that is much more serious, and it's a more traditional idea of research. So literally what books can be read. And so this is definitely the experience of like that person that always has their nose in a book or is online gathering some sort of research. But yeah, it's definitely being moved by gathering information. And there are so many expressions of gathering information, from a quick conversation with somebody, from a different experience than yours, or straight up like intellectual research. Yeah, Gemini loves an interesting person, loves to relate to someone who has a different experience of theirs, and is quite often the most open-minded person in the room as it relates to connecting to people with a different experience than theirs. And I love that for them. You go, Gemini Rising. Now let's look at Taurus risings. So Taurus is a fixed earth sign ruled by Venus. Again, fixed energy, committed to, loyal to earth, anything to do with this sort of physical realm. And Venus, something about being attractive or attracting, and beauty. So when I put all of those things together, I think about Taurus rising being so committed to its values, and also maybe a bit about commitment to beauty as it relates to all of the things that it can experience in this tangible realm. So maybe an outward expression of beauty in terms of like one's presentation, beautiful clothing, beautiful makeup and hair, but also maybe like comfortable surroundings, like a beautiful home and beautiful furnishings, maybe something around delicious meals, or amazing, beautiful smelling perfumes. It's just all of these beautiful sensory experiences, and how Taurus rising might have the experience of being committed to and prioritizing these kinds of things. And then when I think about the descendant for Taurus risings, that Scorpio energy is very interesting. So relating to people through this lens of Scorpio. So a lot of what I think about when I think about Taurus is I have, whereas when I think about Scorpio, which is its opposite, I think about what I want. And I'll explain that further. So Scorpio is this fixed water sign ruled by both Mars and Pluto. And so when I think about the fixed energy of Scorpio and relating to the world through this fixed Scorpio energy, I think about still waters running deep. And so when I think about the still waters running deep and Taurus rising, I think about relating to the world through a sense of being more mysterious, or at least taciturn, or straight up being attracted to or curious about people who have that kind of Scorpio energy. I think so much about Taurus rising being an embodiment of like stability, that when I think about how they relate to people, it can be this feeling of, it's that Scorpio still waters running deep, that sense of mystery. You know who's a perfect example of this? Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation. Did you ever watch that show? Very much outwardly stable, committed, loyal, but there's a sense of mystery, a sense of what lies beneath the surface, what secrets are being hidden. And I think a lot about that as it relates to Taurus rising kind of energy. It's also interesting to think about Scorpio's Mars-Pluto connection, and how so much about Mars and Pluto are about power dynamics in relationship, and how Taurus is so much about wanting stability and wanting to establish that this is how it is, this is mine, this is how it works. And so it's interesting to think about Taurus rising relating to people through this Scorpio lens of power dynamics. This person is mine. This is what I am committed to, and this is what I have, this person, this relationship. And so what are power dynamics like in Taurus rising relationships? Not just the romantic ones, but even like being a Taurus rising's best friend or work partner. How annoying must it be for Taurus risings to relate to people or be interested in relating to people with the Scorpio energy, because Scorpio is so much about transformation and Taurus is so much about this is how I have decided things are, this is what I have, and this is how it's going to be. And so that beautiful tension between those kinds of realities, I wonder what it's like to embody that. Comment below if you are a Taurus rising. You're probably the sign that I'm actually most curious about. And finally, Aries rising. So Aries rising is another cardinal sign, leader being first. Literally, Aries is the first zodiac sign. Another cardinal sign that is a fire sign. And so yes, to anything to do with like creativity, passion, what you're most excited about. That's the kind of energy that is gonna fuel an Aries rising, anything that you're excited about. And then also that Aries rising is ruled by Mars, the planet of passion, the planet that gives us our drive, our oomph to get things done. So Aries rising can have this sense of me first. It can be a sort of like impulsive kind of vibe, right? Because of the Mars energy, it can be a competitive kind of vibe. Because it's that first sign, it's kind of like the embodiment of like being new to the world, this kind of like childlike energy. So it can have that kind of childlike impulsivity, playfulness, joy with it as well. It's just a joyful, impetuous kind of energy. But the thing that you have to remember about an Aries rising and that energy is that it has Libra on the descendant. So relating to people with this Libra energy, the first and foremost thing that comes to mind is prioritizing other people over yourself as the big thing with Aries rising and having Libra on the descendant. Why do I say that? Because Libra rising is a cardinal air sign ruled by Venus. And so yes, to like being a leader, but a leader in the realm of communications and a leader in the realm of communications that are beautiful because of that Venus energy. So we're talking about diplomacy, being charming. So yes, to relating to people through this lens of like being charming and saying the exciting thing, and also being attracted to people who are, you know, charming and doing the exciting thing. But Libra is very much well known for those beautiful communications, and sublimating their own desires. Think about relating to people through a Libra lens. I very much think about what can be said that promotes harmony. Not necessarily what can be said that is my truth, what it can be said that prioritizes myself, what can be said that is maybe a little unpleasant to hear, but rather what can be said that is harmonious. It's also really interesting to me when I think about this Aries Libra connection with Aries rising, Libra on the descendant, because Aries is so much about, one of the things that I associate it with because of that Mars ruling is the sense of bravery, and relating to people through this Libra lens and what it means in terms of being brave to be in relationship, being brave enough to be in relationship, understanding that one of the scariest things that we can do is connect to other people, generally speaking. How can we be brave enough to find beauty in our connection to other people? And what is it like to be brave enough to lean on someone else for support? That's huge. Thank you, Aries Rising, for embodying that bravery. That is all 12 rising signs and their descendant counterparts. And yeah, just thinking aloud about what it's like to embody these rising signs and what it means to relate to other people and desire relationship in the descendant sign kind of way. Let me know if you resonate with your rising sign. I'm very, very curious, and what your experience of the descendant sign has been along with that. Comment below, because you know I love it when I hear from you. I'm not doing this for my health. I want to be in conversation and dialogue with people that are thinking about these ideas. So yeah, definitely comment below. Also, reminder that if you would like to support my capacity to continue making these videos and doing this work and talking about all the astrology things, please consider becoming a channel member. Cosmic Cuties get to have all kinds of perks like custom loyalty badges, custom emojis. You get to see videos earlier than everyone else, and you get to be put to the front of the line when I do lives where we look at folks' astrology charts. I do those lives at the beginning of the month. So yeah, please consider becoming a channel member. Membership starts at $3.99 a month. Even if you don't have that monthly coin, I absolutely understand. Please consider a one-time gift or tip using that thanks button below. You get to decide how much and how often. So yeah, those are the ways in which you can support me in doing this work. You can also support me in doing this work by commenting on my videos, liking my videos, and of course being subscribed to this channel. Tell a friend to tell a friend. I think that's it. Yeah, that's the video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, if you have made it to the end, for just having my back. And as always, thank you for making time for queer astrology. Bye.